test and prototype as much as you can early on, because if you get towards the end and that's when you start your prototype, you're too late.
Hello and welcome to the Being an Engineer podcast. Today we are thrilled to speak with Patrick Jreijiri, who is an accomplished entrepreneur and engineering professional with extensive experience in business development, mechanical engineering, and product design. He currently serves as the founder and CEO of Jiri, a company dedicated to creating innovative solutions in the tech industry. With a strong background in engineering and a passion for technology, Patrick has successfully navigated the challenges of starting and growing his own business, and his insights into remote work, product development, and entrepreneurship make him a valuable guest for the Being an Engineer podcast. Patrick, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Aaron, for having me. I've been waiting for this.
Terrific. All right. So, Patrick, what made you decide to become an engineer?
Well, like any other kid that grew up playing with Legos and watching anime, Gundam, Albatross, all the robots on those cartoon shows, you would end up wanting to go into robotics, and that was the thing that pushed me towards mechanical engineering. I went into school and I started taking some robotics courses, and I hated it.
Really?
Yes, it wasn't what I expected. I don't know what I expected. Just a lot of math, and I didn't really enjoy it, but I enjoyed something that is closer to it, which was mechatronics, and it's the combination of mechanical and electronics. So I started doing more of that, and I had an amazing professor that he had big passion for it. Shout out to him. He has been he transferred that passion to me as well. And I really enjoyed it, and I've been working since then with it.
Terrific. All right. So can you share a little bit about your journey through product design, mechanical engineering, mechatronics, through starting your company, Jiri, and then maybe tell us a little bit about what you do at your company?
Yeah, for sure. I started back in college. I had a friend that was telling me that he started taking some contract work. What is that? I grew up in Lebanon, and in Lebanon, if you want to do mechanical engineering, it means that you are doing HVAC. 95% of graduates go work in HVAC, whether they were in Lebanon or the Gulf or Europe or anywhere else. And so when I heard that there's something else, okay, that is interesting. I knew that I wanted to do robotics before, and I wanted to do something other than HVAC. My dad was in HVAC. I didn't enjoy it. I wanted to just go against the flow. And that's my character. Sometimes I just want to go against the flow just because. So
just for fun.
Yes. And so I started doing that, and I checked different places where I can work and do my internships that has nothing to do with the HVAC. I worked in an aluminum foundry. I worked in a company that creates and builds conveyor belts and palletizers and depalletizers. And I even worked in a car mechanic shop, just because I wanted to do things with my own hands. I wanted to try things. I want to see how things work, how to fix them, and all of that. And from there, I started taking more internships like that. And then when I graduated, I started before I graduated, I'm going to go a little bit deeper than just the engineering. I was going through a hard time in my personal life, and that made me not do very well in school. So back then I started thinking, okay, I'm not doing very well here. Should I turn to something like psychology or something else? Because I like talking to people, I like helping people. But the thing that happened is that's a very long arc that we can talk about, or anyone that wants to talk about it can reach out to me. But I was with some friends and staying the weekend there. And they asked me, "Hey, Patrick, do you want us to pray?" Like, yeah, sure. So we started praying. And then one of the guys there, he said, "Patrick, I want to tell you something. God wants to tell you that he's going to use your inventions." And for me, just being, not being a religious person, just more of a spiritual, I know that there's someone out there, but nothing more than that. I took that as a confirmation for myself to go into that direction of inventions. And that has set my trajectory for the rest of my life, basically. And I was 20 years old. Now I'm 30, 35, almost 36 in July. And I've taken that word and I've lived by it since then. But the problem is when I finished, I had an opportunity to work with a company that works with leadership development and helps young people and businessmen and entrepreneurs and everything on how to develop their characters, their productivity and all of that. I was offered a position there. I worked with them for a year, a little bit less than a year and a half. No, actually a little bit less than 2 years. And I hated it because I had to do sales. I had to do something that was not inventing stuff. And but I learned a lot from it. I learned marketing. I learned processes. I learned sales. For me, 1 + 1 is equal 2. That was my sales technique. So if I tell you what it is, you should know that this is the best thing ever. And if you don't buy, there's something wrong with you. And that didn't work very well at all, as you can imagine. But I learned a lot from it when it comes to sales and sales techniques and all of that. And from there, there's always the first question in the course that I was giving. What is your dream? And we start that first chapter. We start there, and from there we start putting goals. So from there, we continue over the next six months. One time I was interviewing a friend of mine, trying to sell him the course. He said, "Patrick, what is your dream?" I just took a moment. Wait a second. That is a deep question that I probably haven't fully thought about it before. And I said, I want to have my own shop where I have my laptop. I design things, I build them, I prototype them, and I sell them. Either do it for people or do it for myself. Said, yeah, why aren't you doing that? Said, that's a good question. And so from there, it wasn't long. It was just a couple of months after that, I quit and I started doing what I wanted to do for real this time. And I started in 2015, January 2015. I started taking projects. I had my first project that got published everywhere. It's a shoe that uses magnets for cushioning. It was called 2016 Moonwalker. It was a really amazing product, and we designed it. We had prototypes and everything. It was amazing. The magnets were a little bit too strong for the Chinese women trying to build the prototype in China. And so they were telling us we needed to have men to come and pull off the shoes off of the work tables because the work tables were metal. It was funny, but it got on Indiegogo. They got $200,000 funding. It got into 50 different articles and magazines, and it got on science.com. It got on playboy.com, you name it. But
wow,
because of lack of good management, the project died. All of my hopes died. I thought that, oh, wow, I'm starting like this and I'm hitting the jackpot from day one. It's going to be amazing.
But I have a question about these shoes. The magnets in them, were there like two opposing magnets so that when they were compressed, that's where the dampening or the cushion came from, or was it a different? Okay, got it.
Yeah, there was.
That's really interesting.
there was 6 millimeter gap between them.
Okay.
And I got the footprint or the pressure map of a foot and tried to place proper magnets in the places where the foot pushes the most. And so it was pretty interesting. I didn't get to try them. I know where the prototype is right now. I lost all contacts with the original client, but I wish I can have my hands on them. If anyone that's listening,
so you never got to try them on?
No, never.
Oh, bummer! Shoot, that would have been so fun.
Yes, but I was told that walking in them is really amazing. That's what I was told by my client.
I'm so curious to experience that. Yeah. Wow.
If I receive them, I'll try them and mail them to you.
Okay. I'm going to hold you to that. Everyone, you heard it here. It's a promise.
Yeah. Yes.
So that brings up an interesting point. We just had an event here at Pipeline last week called PDX Product Development Expo. And one of the presenters, Ian McCatherine, who's been a guest a couple of times here on the podcast, talked about this really cool artificial heart development project that he was on, where they developed, they went through the full process. They developed a functional artificial heart in about a year. And he didn't go into why, but he mentioned that the engineering team did everything right. The product worked as advertised, but it never really saw the light of day. It never became an actual product. And that's something that happens, right? Your story is the same thing. Engineering did everything right, but for whatever reason, there are probably a myriad of different reasons out there for why these things happen. The product it doesn't go anywhere. How did that feel to you?
Oh, it's very disheartening. And it's not the last time that it happened, and happens over and over and over. I was working on this project. I started from scratch on it. A company hired me. It was a Canadian company. They hired me to design, or at least to lead the team that would design a robot that builds prefabbed houses. And we designed it. We designed the whole thing. When we were ready to start building it, what was needed had changed and wasn't communicated to me properly. And then we had to scrap the whole project. And we had spent around 7 or 8 months working on it.
Oh, painful.
Yes. And can you imagine, you have a couple of trailers, they show up to your land, and then a couple of trailers of panels, and the robot, the trailers would attach to each other like a transformer. It opens up and starts picking up those panels and putting them in place. You need only 2 people on site, just an operator and a manager, basically. And you can run it 24/7 with 3-shift crew. And it would build the whole house. And the plan was to build the house in 7 days. So imagine you can show up, buy a piece of land, and then take whatever time it needs to build the panels off-site. And then when everything shows up on-site, you have 7 days and the whole thing is ready to move in.
Amazing.
Yeah. So they scrapped the project, and I was really bummed because it was one of the best projects I've worked on, and one of the best companies and best teams that I've worked with. But it just got canceled and it didn't work out eventually.
Yeah. Well, shoot. I've been on projects like that as well. I'd spent almost 2 years working on a medical device right towards the beginning of my career. And that one ended up not going anywhere. It's disheartening, like you say, when that happens. But let me ask you a little bit more about starting your business. So that's no small thing to start a business. What were some of the obstacles that you faced in the beginning, and how did you overcome them?
I started my business, you can say, twice, because I started in 2015 and I was working as a freelancer back then. I was still in Lebanon, and trying to build prototypes in Lebanon was very difficult. Getting good internet was difficult. It was very challenging. Working from home was very challenging because no one took you seriously. So it was pretty difficult from that side. But also one of the main challenges as an entrepreneur, and especially working remotely, is the loneliness of it. Because you're working on your laptop all day long, and you don't have those interactions with other people in the office. Why I predict that complete remote work is not going to work completely. There's going to be, eventually, the world's going to settle to something either hybrid or fully back into the office. I know a lot of people are excited about remote working and all of that, but not everyone is built for that. People will start asking to go back to the office because those interactions that you get with your fellow employees, someone passing by, just saying hi, meeting someone or bumping into someone at the water cooler or having lunch together with someone else, that build up your social battery. Whether you are an introvert or extrovert, you need some sort of that interaction.
I agree 100%.
Yeah. And otherwise, you have to be very diligent on making sure that you have a good support group and you have a very good group of people that you hang out with regularly. And back then, I didn't have that in Lebanon. And so I worked like that for 3 years. And then I moved to the US. I was burnt out. I didn't want to work by myself anymore. I didn't want to do freelance because also working in Lebanon, it is a fairly expensive country compared to the rest of third world countries. And I was always competing with people from Turkey, from India, from Pakistan, where they can charge $5 an hour or $10 an hour and live like kings. While if I charge $25, $30, $35 an hour, it wasn't enough. And so I lost a lot of clients because of that, because they were looking for a cheaper option. And usually when people in the US are looking abroad, they are looking for a cheaper option. And so I was at a disadvantage from the get-go. But I still had some awesome projects. I learned a lot. I got to meet a lot of new people, a lot of new ideas. And I built a fairly good upward profile. At the end of it, I had 5 over 5 stars, 100% job success rate. And every time they come up with a new badge, I would ask them like, hey, do I get that badge? Oh yeah, your profile qualifies for that. So I just get it. I don't have to work for it.
So that was the first time, I guess, you started your company. And then you mentioned a second time. Is that after moving to the US?
Yes. I moved to the US, so I didn't want to do that again. I wanted to be working in an office, 9 to 5, like regular people, at least have a steady income, at least so I can support my family. And I found this company here in Waco. It was growing. It's a very, very old company. I think they started in the 1960s. And I started working with them, and it was amazing. I was hired. I went to the interview as a drafter. I was applying for everything from CEO to mechanic. And the only people that replied to me were these people. And I went there. The job was a drafting position. And when they knew that I was a mechanical engineer, they hired me as a mechanical engineer. Not with the pay of a mechanical engineer, but at least it was something. Yeah.
Got to start somewhere.
Yes, exactly. And I started working with them. Eventually, they fired the other guy that I was supposed to be helping. And they told me, Patrick, now you're in charge. Oh, wow. It was just 2 months in, and I was still at temp. And so they were like, okay, do what you got to do. You need to hire people, start department, whatever that you want.
Wow. That's a lot of responsibility very early on.
Yes. And so I started hiring people, and I pulled a few people from the shop floor. So I ended up with people that are someone that was a machinist, a mechanical engineer, and two people from the shop floor. One that was there for 30 years or more, and one that is very good in electrical and hydraulics and has studied all of those systems of the company. And so I pulled them in, and that way they were going through every job that I draw or anyone on my team draws, and they would give us feedback. And that way we were able to capture a lot of the tribal knowledge that was on the shop floor onto paper, because that wasn't being done before whatsoever. And we started building processes and building trainings for the shop floor, especially for the newer hires, because they started getting to a point where everyone is close to retiring, close to the end of their life, or they just want to do something else. And so the turnover of employees was very high. So we were tasked in building a training for them. And the guy that we got, shout out to him, his name is Rudy. He's one of the most amazing guys you can ever meet. He built amazing trainings for them, and it was drastic on how it changed the shop floor. And from there, I built, during those 2 years, I built systems for them. I helped them move from paper folders to everything digitized. I helped them change some designs and standardize some designs. I had 16 different configurations. With changing just certain designs, we took them down to only 2. And that helped a lot in training and onboarding new people. And with all those changes, I was able to save them. I did the math. I was saving them $2.4 million year over year. It was 1.2 the first year, and another 1.2 the second year, and then from there it was 2.4 every year.
You were a good investment.
Yes, and still wasn't getting paid an engineer's salary. I had still got some amazing raises, which nothing to laugh at, but I wasn't even close to the engineering salary of my area. And when I told them, like, hey, I need a higher raise, I said, well, Patrick, we don't care if you go make millions. This is our final offer. Like, okay.
Oh, my goodness. That's terrible.
Yeah. It was an amazing experience for me. I learned a lot. And I knew it was coming eventually. And I knew that it was going to come to an end, because I started feeling like I need to be doing by what I used to do, because I enjoyed it more, and less stress, less politics, less issues happening between shop floor and managers and me being stuck in the middle and all of that. So I started taking projects on the side while I was working there, starting around October of 2019. And I started taking, around August 2019, I started taking side projects, and they were pretty decent amount. And then when I reactivated my Upwork profile, I saw what I used to charge back in Lebanon. So I was like, you know what? If I want to get any project here, I better really get something really wow for it. And so I doubled whatever I used to charge back in Lebanon, and it was also double of what I was getting for my salary.
Wow.
And then I added some, like, you know what? Since I'm doing this, why not? So I put a number that was only imaginary for me. And I got a project. Like, oh, okay. So I started working on it. And then I got another project and the third project while I was still working at that company, and started getting towards October, November of that year, and started feeling, you know what? I think we might be able to pull this off. I talked with my wife. We prayed about it, everything. And I said, I think I'm going to quit on my 2-year anniversary because learning from the older generation, that's the right thing to do. If you want to quit, you stay for 2 years, not 3 months like how it's happening these days. So we did our bills. We checked our expenses. We made sure that our expenses are as low as possible. And I found out that I have a runway of 4 or 5 months with just those projects and whatever we had saved up. So I was like, okay, you don't want to give me the raise. I quit. Here's my 2 weeks notice and I'm leaving.
Now, I want to ask, when you put your 2 weeks notice in, were they surprised? Do you think they were thinking in the back of their heads, he's not ever going to quit. We'll give him a little bump in pay and he'll stay. Or do you think they were kind of expecting it at that point?
I think they were expecting it because the new manager that I got, I really bumped heads with him and I didn't enjoy him at all. And so probably that was part of it as well. And I always called people on their BS. And people don't like that, apparently. And so I had to move on. Especially like you work in engineering and you work in CAD models and everything. I was able to build an Excel sheet, just Excel sheet. I'm not expert in coding, but I was able to build an Excel sheet that is used by the salesman, where they go and build all of the configurations that they want with the client on the spot. It goes to a database, pulls up all the prices for all the parts, all the components, everything that they need, and it gives you a price right there on the spot. It would be more of a quote or like preliminary quote. Definitely, it has to go back to procurement and quoting and engineering for anything that is outside of the ordinary, because we had a salesman that was really selling the craziest stuff, which I don't mind. There are some people that uses those, whatever that they were selling that for like daily, and they really needed some extra features and bells and whistles. And so I just needed to be able to capture all of that and not having to rely 6 months in advance or having 6 months down the road and then find out that, there's new stuff that's supposed to go with it. And I even built a way to connect it to SolidWorks and build a CAD model based on the Excel sheet, and it gives us all the drawings in just one click, basically. And that would have reduced the process of processing any order from 6 months to 2 days, if any.
Wow. So it sounds like you had automated a large part of the entire process for them.
Yes. Other than the actual manufacturing, I automated it.
That's very cool.
Yeah, they said, no, sorry, we're not gonna do it because if you leave, we don't know, we don't have anyone to take care of it. I'm like, oh, so you're expecting me to leave? You don't want to train anyone, and I've been working on this for the past 6 months, especially that I'm a person that wants to always improve processes and everything. And so if we do this, it helps the company greatly. And that's where I was going. And when they said that, I was like, okay, here's my 2 weeks notice.
You said something earlier about wanting to stay for 2 years and having learned that from the previous generation. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your mindset in that, I don't know, call it loyalty, call it dedication, call it whatever you want. But can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think it's rare these days that you find someone who's willing to stick it out for some minimum amount of time, which is not a short amount of time. I mean, 2 years that's a pretty significant amount of time. So tell us a little bit more about that and what was going through your head during those 2 years.
I heard from people older than me that here in the US that the average or the good thing to do is to stick it out for 2 years, because if you want to go get another job, it's a little bit more difficult to get another job if they see you hopping a lot. And that was pre-pandemic mentality. I know now it's completely different. If after 2 months you feel that, oh, this isn't going to work, you just quit and go find something else. And it was first some sort of a loyalty, more of it thinking about myself, that it would look better for my resume, because I don't want to be hopping a lot. And so if I want to go and get another job somewhere else after I finish from that company, it'll be easier to say, yeah, I stuck out for 2 years, so I can do it again. I'm not going to leave halfway through it.
Yeah, I think that says a lot. I mean, as an employer myself, when I see that engineers have been moving from job to job, 6 months, a year, that's definitely a red flag for me. And I think that can be difficult to overcome. So I congratulate you for being willing to put the time in and stick it out. Of course, I'm not suggesting that, if someone's in an extremely toxic environment, they should just stick it out. But it sounds like, anyway, I think that's, it says a lot about you and your character that you were able to do that.
Thank you.
All right. Well, let me take a very short break here and share with the listeners that our company, Pipeline Design and Engineering, develops new and innovative manufacturing processes for complex products and then implements them into manual fixtures or fully automated machines to dramatically reduce production costs and improve production yields for OEMs. Today, we have the privilege of speaking with Patrick Jreijiri, and we're talking a little bit about his journey to creating his own company and some of the background experiences he had before that. Let's talk a little bit more about product development. So when you create a new product, obviously there are a lot of hurdles to overcome, a lot of obstacles. Can you describe the process that you follow at your company, Jiri, to take a product from concept all the way through market ready?
This is the $1 million question. A lot of people ask me, why don't you set up processes for that? Why don't you hire people to do this? It's just, when you get to a point where you need to be creative, you cannot put a process on creativity, but you can control a few things, or whatever thing that you can control. I usually start by getting the needs and the wants from the client. And from there, I can determine the deciding factor, whether it was size of battery, the torque of the motor, the size of the device, any forces that are on there. I see what is the deciding factor and what cannot be changed whatsoever. We need this to be running this type of motor because we need this type of torque. So I start there and I start building around it. I start building an enclosure, finding the right batteries, the right sensor, the right component, the right hardware. And from there, I start building everything around it and starts growing with that thing, that deciding factor as the heart of it.
Brilliant. You mentioned how it can be difficult to put a process around creativity. I've found similar things in my business. Nevertheless, there are some processes that we do have in place. Some of those processes come around defining budgets and schedules for the projects, which we do our best to hit. But hey, It's a creative process, right? It's innovation. It doesn't always happen. Do you find that it's pretty easy for you to, at the beginning of a project, estimate how long that project's going to take, how many hours it's going to take, what the costs are going to be? Or are you typically providing your customers with kind of a rough ballpark or maybe a range?
I usually offer them a range, but there was a client a year and a half ago. They asked me to do something for them, something very complicated. I told them it's going to be around 70 hours. It's going to be plus or minus a little bit. They said, okay. I started working on it. I finished it. I checked back my report. I found out that I worked 60 and a half hours. 69 and a half hours.
Oh,
So
wow. Very, very
30 minutes.
close.
Yes, I was only 30 minutes
Yeah.
off. And the more I worked and the more I work on new projects, I start understanding my capabilities and my ability to finish on time and how much each project requires.
Yeah. Is Upwork your primary place to find new work? How are you advertising and finding new jobs?
Well, I have a very interesting case because the more I advertise and the more I market myself, the less client I get. The less I advertise, the more clients I get, which is
fascinating. Why is that, do you think?
I think it comes down to my trust in God. And it's his nod to me to say, I provide for you. It's not what you do. It's not by your own strength. Is when I provide for you. And seriously, I was getting projects. I was getting 6-7 projects at a time. There were some weeks where my record have been 7 sales meeting in 1 week, in a span of 1 week or 5 business days. And the average sales call was 13 minutes. I timed all of it. Just I was being curious. And I got all of them. And in just 13 minutes. And I didn't apply to any of those jobs. It's just people that reached out to me.
Amazing. Wow.
And when I started doing marketing and SEOs and all of that, everything dried up. I'm not saying that should be everyone's strategy. I'm just saying this is what has been working with me. And this is my testimony when it comes to finding new work.
Fascinating. Okay, so you've been doing Jiri here in the US since 2019, so about 5 years, something like that. I'm assuming there are times when you have so much work that you can't do it all by yourself. How do you handle those situations?
I wanna keep my cost very low, so I hire contractors instead of full-time salary employees, W-2s. And so that way, whenever I have a project, I get a contractor, I hire them for that specific project, and then when that project finishes, they move on with their life. I move on with my life with no strings attached. And that way, I'm not paying extra overhead. And whatever work that they do is actually generating income for me. Because usually, as you know, the engineering department is usually an overhead. But I try to circumvent that and make the engineering department or whatever engineering services or product design services that I offer to be the generating aspect of the company.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of similarities between Jiri and what Pipeline was back in the beginning. We were the same way. I only hired contractors. I didn't want the liability of full-time employees. I guess for me, when that changed is when there was just so much work and a history of so much work that looking at numbers, it made sense to hire people full-time. It was actually less expensive that way. Yes. But until you have that history of always enough work, then I hear what you're saying. It can be challenging to commit to hiring people full-time.
Yeah. And I'm with you. I think I want to be where you are right now. I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure if I want to be dealing with teams and people that big and with multiple teams. Sometimes I think I just want to be dealing with just myself, some clients, maybe a contractor here and there, and that's it. And sometimes I'm like, what if I grow this thing and start making millions instead of just enough for me and my family to go on vacations, enough to buy few rental properties, have some passive income, and call it good.
Yeah, I'm laughing because I was right there. I remember going to lunch with a friend of mine, way back in the day. This is the first year or so of my business, and him asking me, why don't you hire employees? And I said, I don't want to worry about anyone else. I'm happy, just me. I never want to have anyone else. I just want it to be me. It's much easier that way. And, I guess things changed. As I look back now, there's no way I would want to do this by myself anymore. And I'm not saying, that's going to be the case for you, or that's going to be the case for anyone else out there who's kind of freelancing right now. It was just interesting how things changed over time.
Yeah, I'm just following the flow and see where it leads. And if I have to hire people later on, I'll hire people. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, there you go. Well, Patrick, let me ask you one more question before we sign off here. What is one or maybe two things that you have been able to do over the years to accelerate the speed of your engineering, your product development? What are some pro tips that you found useful in just accelerating the speed of these projects?
Testing and prototyping. Test and prototype at every single step, because you can design as much as you want on your CAD software or electronic software. And when you get the physical parts, it's going to mess up and it's not going to behave how you thought it's going to behave. No matter what you do, no matter how many times you revise it or how many times you show it to people, it's going to give you issues. And so test and prototype as much as you can early on, because if you get towards the end and that's when you start your prototype, you're too late, because you'll have to go back and change a lot of stuff.
Wise words. And I couldn't have put it any better myself. Okay. Well, Patrick, thank you so much for being on the show today. How can people get in touch with you?
They can reach out to me on LinkedIn. My name, Patrick Jreijiri, or through they can go to my website. It's www.jiri.tech. It's JIRI.tech. I tell people Jiri is like Siri, but with a J, just so they can remember it. Or they can email me at Patrick, PATRICK, @jiri.tech.
Wonderful. All right, Patrick, anything else that we should talk about that we haven't covered before we sign off?
For engineers, I advise them to always work in different fields and not get stuck in one certain field, because you can always draw inspiration from different things, from different fields. You can start implementing stuff that you learn in your automotive experience into your consumer products, or something from your consumer products experience into the industrial machinery, and start coming up with simpler designs, because the consumer products focuses on cost, but the industrial focuses on robustness, and they don't think about cost as much as the consumer product field. And so you can be learning things from each other. You can find a controller that you use in your small components that you can actually use in your industrial machines. Doesn't always have to be a PLC that costs you an arm and a leg. I know in some cases, no, you have to do that. But in some cases, you can get something that is cheaper than a few $1,000s. You can probably get something for $50, $100 and do the exact same work.
Well said. Great advice. And Patrick, thank you again so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, Aaron. That was really, really nice to be here.
I'm Aaron Monker, founder of Pipeline Design and Engineering. If you liked what you heard today, please share the episode. To learn how your team can leverage our team's expertise developing advanced manufacturing processes, automated machines, and custom fixtures, complemented with product design and R&D services, visit us at teampipeline.us. To join a vibrant community of engineers online, visit thewave.engineer. Thank you for listening.